Hi, I'm Sharaad Kuttan and welcome to Let's Talk, the show that brings you the most important conversations in art, culture and ideas. Today we're at the Gerak Budaya bookstore and my guest is Suganthi Suparmaniam, the author of The Story of Bentong Kali, a name that many of us, at least in my generation, are familiar with. Suganthi's book in English will be published in Tamil at some later date, and we're going to be talking to her about why she decided to write this book. Suganthi, thank you so much for joining me on the show. Let's begin with you first, and your motivations to write a book, because a lot of us know about Bentong Kali, but we don't necessarily take the trouble then to kind of pursue these almost mythical, personalities in Malaysian life to the extent of writing a book. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your motivations.
Thank you for having me, Sharaad. Okay, I started off with the idea to do this book is because of my master's. So one of my requirements for my master's studies is that we have to come up with a project. It can be a book or it can be a film or a campaign. I don't know how to do movies, so I thought maybe I can just write. So that's why I decided to choose to write a book.
And what course were you doing?
I was doing media studies at University of Malaya.
Okay.
So it was a one-year coursework, and yeah, that was our project.
Yeah, and so of all the people that you could have written about, and I know you explained in the introduction, the fact that you knew of Bentong Kali and then he had this kind of almost mythical status in Indian society. And in fact, I think it goes beyond that, Bentong Kali. Why him? Why choose this character of all the possible books and personalities to write about?
Well, I've always been interested in this personality because most Indian families are aware. I mean, not just Indian families, but a lot of Malaysians know about this notorious gangster, Bentong Kali, in the 90s. But there's so many colorful stories about this guy. You know, they say that you can't touch him, he disappears, and then you can't shoot at him. And when if a police tries to shoot, I mean, a lot of things, a lot of colorful stories about him. So that was something that I wanted to find out. I wanted to find out more in detail. So I decided to talk to his family members. I talked to his former gang members. I spoke to the police. I spoke to the journalists so that I can get a better understanding of who this guy really is. So that was the because of his name, everybody knows who this guy is, and I wanted to know more.
Right,
so that was just a very simple thing here. Yeah,
I mean, there's so many others I guess one thinks of in terms of gangsters and the kind of underworld characters, Botak Chin, I guess, emerges. And today, of course, crime is committed and the most interesting characters are actually in white-collar crime. So you think of, the one in MDB's saga, there you have a wonderful case of criminality, but of course, played out at a very different realm. So this was a very local story, and the fact that he's named after a place in Malaysia, Bentong, also gives a kind of color. In researching this, and even before embarking on it, the fact that he had already passed away, that he was not available to be interviewed, did you think of that as a major obstacle to getting at the truth or the reality of his life and motivations?
Well, yes, of course, that really was something I felt that, it would be better to have the person himself telling the story. But then it was too late. He was shot in 1983. But then what was the next best thing to do, which is to research and talk to those who were close to him. The thing that was most interesting to me at the time was the Malay Mail article on the 16 murders committed by Bentong Kali. Now, I wanted to know, did he really do the 16? So that was the first idea. And then from there, I went to his circle and I asked them to explain to me what happened in all these 16 cases, what actually took place. And so from the research, I kind of understood that not all 16 was committed by this guy. There was someone else at play. So I thought that would give a different perspective to the whole Bentong Kali story.
Yeah, we can dwell a little bit on data because as you kind of pointed out, he did have run-ins with the law starting from a very young age. But I wonder how much of police archives and data or even court transcripts are available for somebody doing research of this sort. Were you able to find material like that?
Yes, for lawyer, yes, I did have a lawyer who helped me. A lot of newspaper articles. At that time, I think we started online from 1991. So a lot of articles were available from 1991 onwards. But the previous ones, mostly in Tamil press, were not online. So I had to go to the National Archive to retrieve the information. That was kind of difficult, accessing the information. So, and also because it was not available in other languages. So when you see that, when you look at the article in Tamil press, it's like one whole page. When you see that the same story in an English medium, it's only one small column. So a lot of things are lost there. So and I don't really understand Tamil so much. So it took me some time to understand, to translate and all that. So I think that was one of the challenges.
Right. I wonder though, were you modeling your work on books that you had read before, approaches that you had seen, in the literature, looking at how to present criminals? Because there are all kinds of styles, right? You can fictionalize a criminal life that gives you a little more leeway, or you can try and do it in a much more kind of historically accurate fashion using court transcripts and stuff, media reports in this case. Did you have a model for yourself?
Yes, I did. I like this book called Dongri to Dubai. This was written by a journalist in India, from India. This book is about the rise of Dawood Ibrahim and also other criminals during that time, from the 1950s until the time of Dawood Ibrahim. I think he did a brilliant job, and actually that was like my Bible.
Criminal characters have an attractive force, partly because they're like the anti-hero, basically, aren't they, right? They're larger than life. One thinks of Sacred Games,
yes.
That traces the life of a Mumbai gangster, an underworld character. So you had a model for yourself,
yes.
In terms of how to tell the story. What were the other challenges that you found? You do mention in the book that people were reluctant to speak to you, former gang members who perhaps wanted to remain anonymous, or they wanted that part of their lives erased or invisible. They had started new lives. Some of their families weren't, in fact, aware
Correct.
that they had this
true.
past. How did you deal with that?
Okay, gaining their trust was one thing that I find a bit of an issue. Like you mentioned, some of their family members do not even know that the father was in prison or the father was associated. So that part, I had to convince them a few times. I know I had to go to the house a few times, get them to speak to me in private. Explain to them that hey, I'm just a student. I'm not here to find fault. I'm not trying to pick on any one of the former gang members, and just tell me the story so that I can explain to the world who this person really is. I even went to one of the victims, the one who was stabbed by Kalimuthu, to talk about him. Another issue that I had when writing this book is not every one of them were willing to come forward to talk about him. Some of them didn't really like the idea of who Bentong Kali is and the things that he brought forward and the issues that came up after that, because they thought that after Bentong Kali, Indians were associated with gangsterism. So they didn't like that kind of being associated with Indians. So I could probably just share with you one incident. One of my uncles came over to my house to pass a wedding invitation card. And then my husband told him that, hey, she just wrote a book, it's about Bentong Kali. And this uncle was so upset because he said, why are you writing about a gangster? Why? Because this is the guy who actually, the reason why a lot of Indians are now being associated with gangsterism. And he left the house. He was very unhappy. So this is, there are two sides of people in the society. That one of them, of course, look up to him, another side just don't want to do anything to do with it.
Yeah, and I see that tension in the writing as well, the way in which you feel the need to report on his life, acknowledging that there are some segments of society that do hero worship him and, associate, like you said, some of the magical qualities that he was, he had an amulet
Correct.
from Thailand that protected him from bullets, or that, that he was very kind to people and very generous, kind of raising him into a kind of Robin Hood figure. Yeah. And, so how did you decide where to find that spot between the acknowledging that there was some segment of society hero worshipping him and the realities that might have not quite matched the mythical status that he has achieved.
Okay, what I did was tell the stories from everyone's perspective. So each one of them has got their own understanding of who this guy is. So let them tell the story from them. I mean, let it come from them, who this person is, because I was not there. And I didn't know what actually was happening. I didn't get to talk to the person. I didn't get to, to see what actually took place in the 90s. So when it comes from each one of them, the victims, the family members, the police and the media, so let the reader draw up the conclusion of who this person is.
Right, okay. We're going to take a short break and we're going to be back with more and of Suganthi's really interesting book, The Story of Bentong Kali. Suganthi Suparmaniam is my guest tonight at the show. Stay tuned to Let's Talk. Welcome back to Let's Talk. I'm Sharaad Kuttan. With me, Suganthi Suparmaniam, the author of The Story of Bentong Kali. We're just in the break having a discussion about whether it's called Bentong or Bentong, right? And I've always pronounced it as Bentong. Okay. Let's come to some of the characters. We kind of ended up with that. You actually have a list of characters, starting off with Tan Sri Zaman Khan. And Billiard, I think, is one of the more interesting characters in the book. Tony Emanuel, because is a journalist, well-known journalist that appears in your book. Could you tell us a little bit about the structure of the book? So when a reader comes to it, what can they expect to see unfold through the book?
All right. Okay. I started off explaining who this person, the character is Bentong Kali, is his childhood, and then we went on into explaining the 16 cases that were pinned on him. That is the entire. That's where the book is actually focused on. Whether what are the 16 cases and whether or not did Bentong Kali really commit the crimes that was pinned on him. So the reader will be able to see who are the people involved with Bentong Kali from the early days until he was shot dead by the police. So we also have perspective from the police, from CID chief at the time, Tan Sri Zaman Khan, and also one of the policemen who was closely involved in capturing Bentong Kali at the time. Also from the media perspective, those who have covered him, especially in the 1993, as well as family members, as in just, actually I only managed to get his brother. The rest of his family members did not want to talk to me, including his wife and his girlfriend, who is actually the most, for me, I felt that she's actually very, very important to the story, because we would probably get to know the personal side of this person from the wife or the girlfriend. There was one of thing that I really regret, that I was not able to speak to her. Especially the girlfriend. I was turned down. My offer was to talk to her was turned down. Yes.
I want to sort of focus on the early part of his life because I think in that you speculate a little bit about why he became a criminal. I mean, you lay out the facts of his family's social conditions, but you also note that in this huge family, many children, that one sibling became a police officer,
yes.
and one sibling worked in the court, the eldest brother, yes, I believe, correct. And that he was a very stern and disciplined character. So why is it, when you struggle to find, or as it were, the determinants for criminality, you often say, well, poverty pushes people into criminality and such. This kind of theory tends to get weakened by the fact that there's such a spread of trajectories within a family, right? So at the end of this process, why do you think, your personal view, Bentong Kali went the route that he did?
Okay, one of the things that actually pushed him into becoming a gangster was he was a victim of bullying. He was bullied from a very young age, and that kind of affected him, and he wanted to fight back. He wanted to prove to the others that he could, stand up and fight. But along those ways, he also seemed to have acquired a taste for color, for wealth, and for, I think, attention. So in the end, he started doing the things he did because he wanted to be famous. According to some of his close associates, was that he wanted his name to appear in the newspaper. He wanted to be known to Malaysians. So that thing was what actually happened to him at the end.
Yeah, so this impulse to be famous is interesting because today, with social media, you know, it's a much more generalized thing, and perhaps a lot more people can dream of fame through, well, you know, social media is pretty conventional. Crime it isn't, right? But I think that is, you know, something, a really interesting vein in your story is why he emerges and chooses this life. Okay, so we have that setting for the book. Then you have all these characters, as you explained earlier, that give different perspectives on the man's life. Why was it so important for you to explore the 16 cases, as you said? You know, why is it that you decided that he shouldn't be necessarily stuck with these claims that he committed so many crimes? What was the impulse there?
Okay, I feel that everyone deserves a chance to tell their side of the story, but in this case, this guy is not alive anymore to talk about it. But this is one article that completes his criminal activities in the last 3 years, 91 to 93. So that was one piece of article that actually made me want to explore more. You know, probably I come from a generation that we don't really believe everything that comes out in the media. Okay.
And that's correct. That's a smart move. Okay.
So with my background, I had some help with research materials and accessing archives. I wanted to explore that. Is it really? Did it really happen? Is this really true? So that's why I wanted to use that particular article.
Right. One interesting fact I think about Malaysian life and in culture and the arts is that depictions of the police are very controlled by the police themselves. I mean, you can't actually produce a film where you have a bad cop. I think there was some sort of regulation over that. Did you find it difficult to develop an honest portrait of the police? Because in a situation like that, there are of course questions that will be raised about whether it was necessary to shoot him, and whether this was an extrajudicial killing. How did you deal with that particular dimension of the problem?
Okay, so when I was doing these interviews with the police and people who are from media also, there were instances where I was told to switch off my camera, my recorder. They did not want to go on record saying these are the things that happened. So of course I will also have to protect the identity and also my source for the stories. I think they themselves were not very confident of coming up and sharing a lot of things. So to be fair, I did not, I mean, I respected their wishes and I did not explore on things that they did not want to go on public.
Right. Okay, so you've done this book, and I wish you all the luck with sales and feedback. Have you been getting any reviews?
Actually, I have a lot of people sharing on social media, especially towards his anniversary, his death anniversary, and the day he was shot dead. And I have seen people sharing videos with their photo covers and all that. And a lot of people have come forward after the book was published, sharing with me on more personal stuff that they have known about this Bentong Kali, this character, how he used to travel in the local minibus along Old Klang Road, disguised, wearing wig, you know, dressed up as a woman to do his drug dealings, a lot of other personal stories involving Kalimuthu. So these are the things that only came to me after the book was published. So.
Is it likely that you will be able to do a second edition incorporating this new material?
I am really hoping for Malati to open up to me, the girlfriend. So I have not given up my dream of speaking to this person. Although I was approached by one of someone who's related to her. She texted me actually on Instagram and said that please don't disturb my family anymore. Yet I feel that maybe one day she will want to share her story. Right. Because hers is actually, I don't know, from what I heard, is equally interesting. on how she ended up being with
Kalimuthu. Do you think that ultimately people don't view history as a way of getting to the truth? When they have a chance to speak, they want to present just their side, and they want to justify their actions, and that prevents them from being completely honest with you as a writer.
Definitely, of course, because they have done a lot of bad stuff when they were young and they're younger, and they don't want that to be, they don't want to be associated with what they have done in the past, and
it might be incriminating for them as well.
Correct. And like I mentioned, a lot of family members don't know that their fathers were involved in all this. So yes, the stories that they tell is always very much one-sided, but this is why I always go back to other sources to confirm. If this is the one incident, can these 3 people talk to me about what happened? So that gives I think I was able to give a better perspective with 3 sources, at least 3 sources, talking about one incident.
Right. In the final minute or so that we have, Suganthi, tell us, what's your next project? Have you been excited by this process of putting a book together, and will you take it further?
Well, actually, I'm working on a TV script for this book. I was approached by someone to move it into a movie. So okay. Yeah, I'm working on that. Okay, working to visual medium, which is a very popular medium. Yes.
Do you find that writing, and if you compare that with, say, writing a script, do you find that writing in order to keep people's attention a much more difficult task?
I think people don't read anymore. So I'm hoping that the movie will be much more, we'll be able to explain the story better than print.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Suganthi, for spending time with me on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. So I've been speaking to Suganthi Suparmaniam, the author of The Story of Bentong Kali, available at Gerak Budaya. It's published by Gerak Budaya Enterprises, in fact, and it's available at this bookstore in PJ in section 12. That's all we have for you on the show today. I'm Sharaad Kuttan, only for Astro AWANI.